All right, today we're going to do something a little bit different. Instead of looking at a whole article or a bunch of data, we are zooming way in. We're putting one single sentence under the microscope to unpack every little piece of a really dense and frankly fascinating claim from a well-known historical text.
Okay, here it is. This is our entire world for this explainer. I'm going to read it out loud once so we can all hear it. Dr. Weston A. Price's monumental book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, Chapter 17, reports physical degeneration, increased difficulty in childbirth due to stenosis of the pelvic structure, and exposure to various diseases due to weakened immunity. Wow, that's a mouthful, right? But our entire goal today is just to understand the architecture of that statement. We're going to break it down piece by piece to see what it's actually saying.
So, just to be super clear, our focus isn't on the entire book this sentence comes from. Nope. We're concentrating only on the information and the logic that's packed inside this one specific claim. Let's treat it like its own self-contained argument. So what's our mission? It's purely analytical. We're not here to prove this right or prove it wrong. Think of us as textual detectives for the next few minutes. Our only job is to deconstruct the statement into its core parts. What are the key terms? What kind of cause and effect is it proposing? Let's dig in. Okay, so the whole sentence really pivots around this one central idea, physical degeneration. It's the starting domino for everything else that happens. So the first logical question has to be, what does this term actually mean? At least according to the sentence itself.
What's interesting is the text itself kind of gives us a working definition. It doesn't define physical degeneration with a bunch of abstract words. Instead, it defines it by its reported outcomes. The key takeaway here is that within the logic of this one sentence, physical degeneration is a process that's said to lead directly to two major consequences.
And that leads us right to our next question. The text sets up this chain of events, so let's just follow it. What are the two distinct problems that this physical degeneration is supposed to cause?
Let's start with the first one. The text makes a really specific claim here, one that's all about anatomy and the process of childbirth. Here is that first reported outcome, stated pretty plainly. Increased difficulty in childbirth due to stenosis of the pelvic structure. Now, stenosis, that's just a medical term for a narrowing. So what the text is describing is a physical change, a narrowing of the pelvis. So you can see the logic laid out here, plain and simple. On one side, you've got the cause, stenosis, that narrowing of the pelvic structure. And on the other, the direct reported effect, increased difficulty during childbirth. It's describing a pretty clear, almost mechanical relationship. All right, now for the second outcome. This is where the text takes a sharp turn. We're shifting away from a structural, skeletal issue to something totally different, the body's own defense system. And here's that second claim, again, stated very directly. Exposure to various diseases due to weakened immunity. The logic is just as clear as the first one, but the scope is, well, it's much, much bigger. And we can map this one out just like we did before. The reported cause is a weakened immunity. The reported effect is the body then being exposed to all sorts of different diseases. This isn't a specific structural problem anymore. It's a systemic one. Okay, let's put all the pieces back together. This is basically the entire argument of that one sentence visualized. You start with the core concept, physical degeneration. Then, according to the text, this one process branches out and causes two very different issues, a structural problem, the pelvic stenosis, and a systemic problem, weakened immunity. And those, in turn, lead to the final outcomes, difficult childbirth and exposure to disease. So now that we've pulled the sentence apart into all its little gears and levers, let's zoom back out and look at the whole machine. What did we actually learn by doing this?
I mean, when you put these two outcomes side by side like this, the sheer scale of the claim becomes incredibly clear. On one hand, you have a specific biomechanical problem, a change in the literal shape of the skeleton. It's localized. On the other hand, you've got this huge physiological problem, the failure of the body's entire immune system. And the text ties both of these incredibly different outcomes back to the exact same root cause. That is the key insight from this whole deconstruction.
And that leaves us with this one final, really fascinating question that just comes naturally out of our analysis. By simply mapping out the logic, we land on this puzzle. What kind of process could possibly cause both a specific anatomical change and a general systemic failure at the same time? The sentence doesn't answer that, but it forces us to ask. And that's a pretty powerful reminder of how much complexity can be packed into just a few words.